A big beater in the command zone is something we've all seen. I like these kind of decks too, and I make them pretty often. Having a reliable way of dealing damage in the command zone is always great for those games where you run out of gas. The slow, grindy games that have lots of interaction flying around the table, and the table turns into top deck mode. These decks are great, and having a commander that can be your late game threat is also great. But what happens if you want more out of your command zone? Maybe you like more flavorful commanders that's kind of a pet card to you. Maybe you want card draw out of the command zone, or some other kind of value engine. With so many options for commanders nowadays, it's easy to be flexible. However, it's always great to have some ways of getting in damage with your deck, but not it be the commander itself. I've started adding these late game beaters to my deck recently. Muldrotha has been a combo deck for quite some time, but with Graveyard Hate being so easy to come by and hard to play around, sometimes my win cons just get completely shut down. So my solution has been a pretty decent and easy adjustment. Creatures that get bigger based off of cards in graveyards. Splinterfright, Altar of the Goyf, Exoskeleton Armor, and Urborg Lorgoyf. Each of these cards make my creatures bigger, or can be beaters themselves. The amount of these you actually need to put in the deck is going to be based on what you're actually planning on doing with your deck. In this case, these cards are simply backups to the backup plan. My main goal is to get to 0 cards in library, and I have plenty of payoffs once I do that. But if for whatever reason every single one of those is gone, I can at least deal some damage in the late game. They'd only really be played in the late game when life totals are dwindled down, and 5 to 7 damage is really a threatening number. I would recommend looking at your decks right now that might benefit from adding some cards like this. What we are looking for is a creature that can get bigger the longer the game goes, or is maybe already big and gets its cost reduced over time. A lot of these cards can be found in Standard or some other constructed formats. Hadi Djinn and Tolarian Terror both perform each of these functions, and there are plenty of other cards out there that can help you achieve late game success if and when everything goes wrong. Really, any constructed control finisher can be a good thing to slot in. We only really need a couple. Now, after seeing these cards in the decks that I have, I took a step back and I was inspired by how many of these cards could actually work in Commander. And I had an idea. What if we made decks with these cards being the win cons themselves? I call it one big guy decks. A beautiful archetype. The simple gameplay of playing and managing one big creature that does all your bidding for you. Finding ways to make them bigger and bigger in order to turn a small guy into a big guy, or just using a big creature over and over again to deal you reliable damage over the game. If and when they get removed, you just roll out another one. This video is here to give you some inspiration for decks like this and give you reasons as to why you should play them. I've stated before that simple decks and simple game plans are great for Magic the Gathering players as they take the stress out of playing the game. You get off of work after a long day and you just want to play with a few cards, hang and chat with friends with no sweat, and just swing some dudes around until you win, or of course lose. These decks can invest into other resources that decks need, like card draw, ramp, or even funnier or alternate game plans that you might want to execute. But with one big guy decks, they give you a reliable way to play the game of Magic and cast spells, while still maintaining a small and simple board state. They're very low maintenance decks. You typically have a value engine, a big creature, maybe an enchantment or two, and that's it. Then you typically have a full grip of cards because you're not actually playing very many cards per turn. So you have plenty of interaction, card draw, and probably ramp just stuck in your hand that is always just progressing you forward. One of my favorites of these decks I made recently is a Balmor Battlemage Captain deck. A Spellslinger type deck, but with a beatdown win con. You run a lot of the prowess-esque creatures that make it easy to deal 10 to 12 damage easily with one swing after just a couple of spells played. Then I find ways to double these triggers, and I've got some pretty big guys swinging for quite a lot of damage every single turn. One big guy decks can get even more creative than this though. Have you ever been in some of those games in Commander when you see a deck and you say to yourself, I wish I thought of that? I was playing a game the other day and I found a deck like this, Ball Lightning. Think about this card. How could you make this into a really good beater besides it just being a 6/1? You double its power, you sacrifice it to draw, you reanimate it, and you repeat it. Now, who would be a good commander for something like this? Well, any power doubler, of course. Xenagos or Mr. Orfeo are the greatest options I've seen, with the Rhino giving you access to even more options since it's in black. It's much easier to reanimate in that kind of color combo. Sadly, I cannot take credit for a deck this beautiful. I was playing against it a couple days ago, and I was truly in awe of not only how effective it was, but also how cool it was and unique. And it also was a one big guy deck. They just played one type of ball lightning every single turn, they doubled its power, and they swung in for a ton of damage. Now, I can't take credit for the concept, but I can take credit for the deck list that I made that's in the link in the description below. It's on Moxfield, and while you're at it, you might as well check out other commander decks that I've made. So give me a follow on there. The last one big guy deck that I want to talk about is the mentor kind of decks. The decks where your small creatures get bigger and bigger through your commander or other cards that you play around them. My Storvold Double Strike Tribal deck works wonders as a one big guy deck. You turn your white weenies with Double Strike into incredibly powerful threats as a scary thing to face down. Turn 4 or 5, you're playing out your Storvold because of how much ramp there is, and you're swinging with 14 damage. It's pretty intimidating, that's for sure, and it's not something you want to mess around with. Another commander that can kind of capitalize off of something like this is Ezuri, Claw of Progress. This commander should probably look more into playing some unblockable creatures though. Unblockable creatures that get more and more massive as the game goes on as you get more and more experienced counters. Then of course with +1/+1 counter synergies, you just double the amount of counters being put on the creature and your unblockable creatures now become really big. These decks are some of my favorite because of how strong they can get, but also because it's honestly kind of flavorful when you think about it. Imagine your Triton Shorestalker training day in and day out as a character in Magic, and now your commander comes along and shows it how to get bigger and better. And now your Triton Shorestalker is a huge creature. Talk about a training arc. Or maybe I'm just getting too far into it. When building one guy decks, Power Matters cards are a great inclusion. Don't forget your Hunter's Insights, Greater Goods, and Rishkar's Expertise type cards. These creatures get big, so you gotta use that to your advantage. Some other utilities you can probably add in this category of decks are cards with Exalted. This will give you an even bigger boost to your power, helping your swings be even more effective. When you're only focused on 1 or 2 cards doing important things for your deck at a time, you can allocate more resources, both mental and physical, into other functions of your deck. One big guy decks are a great time for anyone looking to find a new and creative way to swing big and chillax at your LGS. So check them out today and let me know in the comments what big guy decks you've all been working on. And if you're interested in decks like this, check out my Moxfield in the link in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys have enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe and comment down below any decks that you have been personally working on. I have a whole community of other deck builders that I love collaborating with, and they support me on Patreon, and I'd like to take a moment to thank them all right now. Thank you to all my members: Red Toter, The Lassocrat, George Vazanellis, Chris Smith, Son of Zygote, Ruby Storm, Raphael DDL, Hayeo, Justin, Peachy Star, Zadok, Abrax, Pedro de Olivier, Rylan West, and Hooplight. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for your continued support. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can check it out in the link in my description, and for just $1, you can get access to our Discord. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.